This is Hank Dillon, the Bigfoot hunter. A Hidden Corners exclusive. The Watcher in the Woods, Part 9. In the previous episode, Tom and Darnell barely escaped the armed agents on ATVs racing through the forest. Hiding beneath a fallen tree, the two listened in terror as their pursuers closed in. Meanwhile, deep in the Rocky Mountains, satellite surveillance at Project Silva headquarters flagged a massive heat signature, classified as subject entity, moving near the Colorado-Wyoming border. And within minutes, the elite recon unit Bravo 4 is deployed to intercept. Tracking the creature through the rugged forest, Bravo 4 experiences escalating electromagnetic readings and then direct contact. Their final radio transmission is cut off mid-scream. Back at Facility Black Dome, Colonel Kellis and Dr. Harlan Vicks, they initiated a lockdown and a Level 9 containment protocol. During the debriefing, analysts revealed something unprecedented. The heat signatures showed two massive figures, not one. Vicks theorizes they've stumbled upon an alpha entity, possibly the leader of a hunting party of cryptids. And now we continue with this week's story. Tom Sheffield gritted his teeth against the stabbing pain in his ankle, each step a jolt of agony. Darnell led the way, half crouched, weaving through the thick underbrush along the riverbank. The roar of the water covered their labored breathing, and the towering pines cast long, shadowed fingers across the forest floor. "Not much farther," Darnell whispered, his voice barely audible over the rush of the river. He glanced back, his eyes sharp, alert. The old still should be just over the ridge. "You hanging in there, Tom?" Tom nodded, but his pale, sweat-slicked face told another story. His ankle throbbed with each lurching step, a sharp, burning pain that radiated up his leg. But he had no choice. Stopping meant dying. Those men, they weren't here for questions. They were here to silence him. Behind them, the distant hum of ATVs began to fade away, the searchers pushing farther up the valley. A cold, thin mist was beginning to settle over the river, a ghostly shroud that would help hide their trail. Darnell reached the ridge first, brushing aside a cluster of thick ferns. "Here, this way." Tom followed, gritting his teeth, and they slid down a steep embankment to a narrow, overgrown path. It twisted through a stand of dense pines, and just beyond, nestled against the slope, stood a sagging, moss-covered shack. A rusty metal drum lay toppled beside it, remnants of a previous moonshiner's operation. Darnell helped Tom to the creaking porch. "This was my grandfather's still. He made a lot of moonshine in his time, and this place has been in our family for generations." The shack was dark, the musty air thick with the scent of damp wood and stale earth. Darnell eased Tom onto an old sagging cot full of moose droppings, then quickly barred the door with a thick branch wedged against the frame. He peered through the grimy, cracked window, listening, watching. Tom pulled off his shoe, his twisted ankle swollen and purpling. A large gash across his calf was already turning purple, and his pant leg was soaked with dried blood. "We can't stay here long. They're going to double back." "I know," Darnell said, digging into his pack and pulling out his encrypted cell phone. He powered it on, the screen lighting up with a secured messaging app. His fingers flew over the keyboard, sending a single coded message to an old contact that he trusted. For a long moment, nothing. Only the eerie stillness of the forest outside. Then the phone vibrated. A reply. "He's coming," Darnell whispered, a hint of relief in his voice. "We just have to hold out until he gets here." Tom leaned back, closing his eyes, his breathing slowly steadying. But even as he rested, his mind raced. How far would Project Silva go to bury the truth? Outside, the mist thickened, curling around the trees like spectral fingers. The forest seemed to close in tighter around their fragile shelter. Meanwhile, Wade Dillon leaned back in his cramped Denver office, staring at the tangle of documents spread across his desk. Official records, newspaper clippings, declassified reports. They were all pieces of a twisted puzzle, each more horrifying than the last. His fingers drummed nervously on the desk as he leaned forward, his eyes flickering over the latest documents he had pulled from the Federal Archive. Earl Rollins, a.k.a. Frank Sterling, he whispered, his name now a bitter taste in his mouth. Director of Project Silva, fired for inhumane practices, spent years in federal mental institution, released 10 years ago. But the more Wade dug, the more it became clear that Sterling hadn't been just another deranged scientist. No, he'd been a visionary in the darkest sense, a man who had dared to cross lines that never should have been crossed. His project had been shut down, yeah, but the research hadn't stopped. Wade's breath quickened. It had evolved. Sterling's twisted dream was to create a hybrid, a creature that combined the raw, primal strength of the Sasquatch with the cunning and the intelligence of a human being. But the challenges he met with the project was twofold. Not only was it difficult to capture and contain a Sasquatch, finding suitable human subjects willing or unwilling to undergo the transformation and possibly lose their life in the process was nearly impossible. The Federal Oversight Committee had condemned Sterling's methods, deeming his experiments cruel and inhumane. But when he was removed, his research hadn't been erased. It had been appropriated, taken underground. Project Silva continued. Hidden in the shadows, a black project buried beneath layers of secrecy. Wade's jaw tightened as he opened another file. A list of missing persons reports, most of them filed in remote mountainous regions. Hunters, hikers, and campers who had simply vanished without a trace. And there, an incident report dated 6 months ago. The recovery of a subject described as violent, semi-sentient, and exhibiting animalistic behaviors. It didn't take much to put two and two together. They were still trying. They were still experimenting. But with whom? Wade's mind raced. Prison inmates? The homeless? People society would never miss? Or were they taking their subjects directly from the wild? Those lost hikers and campers whose faces now stared at him from his computer screen. Wade's phone rang and he nearly jumped out of his chair. He grabbed it, seeing his brother's name flash on the screen. "Hank," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Yeah, Wade, I just got your text. What did you find?" Hank's voice was calm, but there was a tension underneath, a tone Wade recognized all too well. "Listen to me, Hank. This is not a can of worms you've opened up here. This is a whole damn den of rattlesnakes. You've got to find a way out of this. The quicker you step away, the better. Tell old Earl Rollins you're giving him back his money, that you don't want any part of this." There was silence on the line. Then Hank's voice, slow and cautious. "It's that bad, huh? But Wade, do we really walk away from this? Or do we expose them?" "Oh, you don't understand how dangerous this is," Wade continued. "I'm telling you that Project Silva is still actively doing experiments on human beings. They're still attempting to create hybrids. Rollins may have been fired, labeled as crazy, and sent to a mental institution, but in the meantime, Project Silva continued doing the same damn thing, only with the feds funding." "Son of a," Hank cursed. "Wade, I'm out here in the thick of it. Tom and Darnell are missing. I just got a message from Tom. and he said men with guns are combing the mountains looking for him. They're hiding out at... Don't tell me, Hank. Don't say anything that might get them compromised. In fact, I want you to go get a burner phone today. I know my calls to you are encrypted, but at this point, I don't want to take any chances. And Hank, you could be next. You have to get out of there now. I can't, Hank said, his voice a low growl. Not yet. Not until I find Tom and Darnell. Wade sighed. He knew his little brother well enough to know he couldn't leave well enough alone. He ended the call with another warning of be careful and stared at that twisted mass of documents on his desk. He knew that somewhere, someone was giving the orders, and Wade was determined to find out who. Hank sat on the worn, sun-bleached porch steps of Michelle's cabin, his gaze lost in the distant tree line. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the clearing, painting the tall pines in warm gold. Beside him, Sassy lay sprawled out, her little tongue lolling in the gentle breeze. The quiet was soothing, but Hank's mind was anything but calm. Michelle stepped out onto the porch, 2 steaming mugs in hand. She set one beside Hank and sank down next to him, resting her shoulder lightly against his. The familiar scent of pine and fresh coffee wrapped around him. You've been awful quiet, she murmured, watching his face. Wade really shook you up, didn't he? Hank nodded slowly. Yeah, you could say that. He took a long sip of the coffee, letting the bitter warmth steady him. Yeah, I thought Earl Rollins was just some rich old eccentric who got it in his head to hire me to chase Bigfoot. Figured he'd seen something, maybe lost someone he cared about, but this... He shook his head, setting the mug down. Turns out Earl Rollins doesn't even exist. His real name's Frank Sterling, former director of some classified government project called Project Silva. Michelle's brow furrowed. Project Silva? Isn't that what Tom Sheffield was talking about? Exactly, Hank said, running a hand over his face. And Sterling, well, Rollins, whatever we call him, he wasn't just part of it, he founded it. But they shut him down because of what he was doing, experimenting on people, on animals, trying to make some kind of hybrid. A shiver ran through Michelle as she set her coffee down. That's just sick, Hank. It is, Hank's jaw clenched. And now I'm thinking, he's not just trying to find Bigfoot. He wants me to catch one, bring it back to him so he can pick up where he left off. Michelle's eyes widened. But you said his lab got shut down, that he was committed to some institution. Yeah, he was, Hank admitted, but that was years ago. And somehow he's out now, pretending to be this crazy old man trying to prove Bigfoot exists. Using me, using us. He looked down at Sassy, who seemed to sense the tension, raising her head up to look at him. Damn it, Michelle, I've been played like a fool. She reached out, gripping his hand tightly. No, you haven't. You were trying to help, trying to get answers, and you did. And now we know what you're dealing with. Do we? Hank leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the ground. I mean, I don't even know how many of these creatures are out there, and I sure as hell don't know how far Sterling is willing to go, or the government that is trying to cover this all up. The forest rustled in the breeze, the soft whisper of pine needles brushing together. The dogs seemed to relax, but Hank could still feel the knot in his gut, the nagging feeling that they were running out of time. So what do we do? Michelle asked quietly. Go to the authorities? Tell them what we know? Hank shook his head. No. If Project Silva is still operating, and from what Wade found, it is, then the authorities are the last people we can trust. Sterling's got money and connections. We go to the wrong person, and we're just handing ourselves over to the enemy. Michelle's hand tightened on his. Then we stay smart. We stay together. We figure this out one step at a time. But I need you to promise me something. Name it. If it comes down to it, if it means keeping us safe, you'll walk away. You won't chase this thing so hard that it costs you your life." Hank's smile faded. "Michelle? No, I mean it, Hank," she insisted, turning to face him fully. "You're not invincible. You're not some action hero out of a pulp novel. You're just Hank Dillon, and I love you for that." Hank let out a slow breath, his gaze softening. "I promise I won't let this get out of control." But even as he said the words, his mind was already racing. Wade was still digging. Tom and Darnell were still out there running for their lives. And Earl Rollins, Frank Sterling, was still out there somewhere plotting his next move. For Hank Dillon, walking away wasn't an option. Earl Rollins paced the uneven stone floor of his old adobe farmhouse, his hands clasped behind his back, fingers twitching with nervous energy. Dust motes danced in the fractured sunlight that filtered through the cracked window panes. But he saw none of it. His mind was far beyond the crumbling walls and the faded rugs of his old laboratory. They had called him mad once, Dr. Moreau, they had whispered. Fools, short-sighted bureaucrats who only saw the failures, not the grand design, the tapestry of creation he had been weaving. Oh, they had taken his labs, shuttered his research, and tried to erase him from history, but they had only delayed the inevitable. Earl's fingers drummed against his chin, his gray eyes feverish with manic intensity. Hybridization is not madness. It is evolution, refined, accelerated. It is transcendence. He spoke aloud, as he often did out here where no one could hear him. He had come so close, so painfully close. The early trials had been crude, gene splicing, forced mutations, surgical grafts of tissue. But those were the fumblings of a young scientist's hands. Now his theories were refined, honed to perfection. Not just a union of human and beast. No, that was a grotesque misinterpretation. His dream was to create a new race, a superior race. Creatures with the intelligence of man, the strength and the endurance of the Sasquatch, and most importantly, the cryptids' uncanny ability to remain hidden, to step beyond the edge of perception. "They fear what they do not understand," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp, echoing off the crumbling plaster walls. "But I embrace it. I make it mine." Yeah, he had seen him. Oh yeah, he had seen the Sasquatch, at a distance, a shadow slipping through the pines, the monstrous muscular frame vanishing into the mist. And his instruments had recorded their presence, anomalous electromagnetic signatures, a faint hum just beyond the range of human hearing, proof of something else. Supernatural? No. Physics. Biology beyond human comprehension. Earl's pulse quickened. His thin lips twisted into a smile. He needed a new subject, a living one. A Sasquatch, yes, but not just any creature. He needed one of the older ones, the true alphas. The ones that had learned to wield their natural gifts, to blur between the seen and the unseen. They possessed a natural cloaking ability, a manipulation of light and sound that was beyond even modern science. Well, that was only scratching the surface. He wanted to harness that ability, extract the secrets from their DNA and infuse them into a human subject. Not a crude, monstrous hybrid, no. A true evolution of mankind, disease-resistant, physically superior, capable of vanishing from the prying eyes of any government agency, any prying enemy. Imagine it. His voice trembled with awe. A new species. My species. And now, with Hank Dillon's stubborn search for the cryptid and the whispers of Project Silva still lurking in the darkness, Earl saw his opportunity. A smile slithered across his lips and his fingers curled in excitement. They called me a madman, he muttered, stepping to the dusty workbench where a scattering of handwritten notes lay. His latest calculations, genetic models, and sketches of the cryptid's unique musculature. But history would call me a god. Somewhere outside, a coyote howled in the desolate desert night. The sound pulled Earl from his reverie, his smile vanishing into a hard, determined line. Time was against him, but necessity was the mother of invention. He had already sent Hank Dillon into the mountains to track the creature, but the fool had no idea that he was being used, and he was only the bait to draw the beast into the open. And once it was captured, once he had his hands on one of them again. Everything they denied me will be mine, Earl whispered, a mad fire dancing in his eyes. And humanity will thank me for it, even if they have to be dragged kicking and screaming into the next stage of evolution. Red warning lights flashed across the vast, dimly lit control room of Facility Black Dome, painting the faces of the technicians and the analysts in a pulsing, hellish glow. Banks of monitors lined the walls, each flickering with thermal imaging, satellite feeds, and tactical maps of the dense forested region near the Wyoming border. Colonel Maureen Kellis stood at the center of the chaos, her crisp, starched military uniform untouched by the frenzy around her. Her steel-gray hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her sharp blue eyes fixed on the primary monitor. As the satellite image zoomed in on the mountain region where Bravo 4's signal had gone dark. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Where's the last telemetry from Bravo 4?" she snapped. "Last ping was here, ma'am. Grid 74 by 32, a young analyst called out, pointing at a flickering dot now marked with a bold red X. Thermal scans show significant movement in the area. Multiple heat signatures, all above human baseline. Kellis leaned forward, her jaw tightening. They're coordinating. They're gathering. Commander Nash stepped forward, a tall, rugged man with a hint of silver at his temples. His voice was calm, but there was a dark urgency beneath it. "We don't know how many of these things are out there." "We know enough," Kellis countered, her voice sharp. "Bravo 4 went in prepared for an encounter. They were trained for this, and now they're missing." Nash stared at her, his fists clenched at his sides. "We need to think of the safety of our remaining teams. Throwing another crew out there blind is a death sentence." A technician to the side raised his hand nervously. Colonel, ma'am, we're picking up something new. Movement around Bravo 4's last known position. Several large heat signatures converging. And there's something else. Anomalous electromagnetic readings. Spikes that match previous cryptid encounters." Kellis's gaze flicked to the monitor, where jagged lines danced wild across the screen, erratic but unmistakable. Her expression hardened. "It's like they're communicating," she whispered, almost to herself. "Like they're calling in their forces. Which is why we need to pull back, recalibrate, and figure out a better plan," Nash insisted. "This is an unknown species, Colonel, a coordinated one. Sending another team out there without more intel is suicide." Kellis turned to face him, her expression a mask of cold authority. "Commander, we cannot lose control of this situation. Bravo 4 was compromised, but we will not let these creatures think they can strike at our operatives without consequence." "So what's the plan?" Nash's voice was forced calm, his jaw set. "Deploy Delta 7 with aerial reconnaissance support," Kellis ordered, her voice like iron. "I want them armed with tranquilizer ammo and live fire backup. Thermal drones overhead and ground sensors in a 5-mile radius. We're not losing any more of our people." Nash's face darkened. "Delta 7 is a containment team, not search and rescue. Are you sending them to recover our men or to put those creatures down?" Kellis's gaze met his, her expression unreadable. Whatever it takes, Commander. We cannot afford to let this breach grow. Our directive is clear. Your directive, Nash muttered, but he didn't challenge her further. Instead, he turned to the comms officer. Patch me through to Delta 7. They need to know what they're walking into. Kellis ignored him. Her eyes locked on the screen where the flickering heat signatures moved through the dense forest like specters. Beneath the flashing red light, her face was a mask of ruthless determination. In the sublevel containment wing of Facility Black Dome, the hum of the overhead lights buzzed with a low mechanical drone, a sound that faded into the background of the facility's white noise. Beneath the red to green pulsing of status lights, the reinforced glass of Containment Chamber 13 shimmered faintly, a thin layer of kinetic energy designed to withstand even the most powerful blows. Inside, the creature watched. It stood motionless, an imposing figure of raw muscle and dark, matted fur that seemed to ripple like a living shadow. Its face was an unsettling fusion. A broad, ridged brow, shadowing eyes that were too sharp, too calculating, too human. Beneath the broad, flattened nose, a mouth twisted into an expression that was almost amused. The creature's gaze drifted slowly as though it could see beyond the glass, beyond the facility's walls, reaching out to the world beyond. And in a way, it could. You are close. I can feel you. I can see you. The whispered thoughts rippled through the dark forest, a silent call that passed like a shadow beneath the trees. Far beyond the steel and the concrete of the facility, nestled in the mist-shrouded wilderness, an immense figure shifted in the darkness. It raised its head, its massive, ape-like body stirring to life. Another call responded, then another, a chorus of silent, primal voices, each creature stirring, each drawn to the same silent song. Back in Containment Chamber 13, the hybrid's head tilted slightly, the twisted smile widening just a fraction. The creature's amber eyes sharpened. It could feel them. It could feel their hunger, their confusion, but also their rage. These were not aimless cryptids wandering the woods. These were its kin, its hunting pack, a pack that was becoming aware, a pack that was listening. In the sterile control room outside, Dr. Hannah Corbin, the senior researcher assigned to Chamber 13, watched her monitors, tracking the hybrid's vitals. Heart rate was steady, neural activity with expected parameters, no abnormal spikes, everything under control. Anything on Subject 13? Asked a voice from behind her. Dr. Corbin glanced back at the technician, barely looking away from the monitor. Same as always, passive, docile. I tell you, you're looking at a success here. Cognitive integration seems to be holding. Well, maybe we finally perfected the process, the technician muttered. This one hasn't even tried to attack the glass. A real breakthrough. Dr. Corbin allowed herself a faint smile. The subject's higher reasoning seems intact, and the cryptid physiology has fully accepted the neural implant. If this continues, we may actually achieve... Her words were cut short as her monitor flickered. Just a brief static surge, then clear again. But in that single flicker, the hybrid in Chamber 13 had moved, only slightly. Its head tilted, its gaze locked directly on the camera. Dr. Corbin's smile faded. Did it just... The technician leaned forward, squinting. Did it just speak? The hybrid's mouth moved slowly, deliberately, as if to make sure his words were recognized. I see you. The technician stumbled back, his face pale. What the... Impossible, Dr. Corbin whispered, frantically tapping at her console. Audio channel is disabled. It can't hear us. It can't speak. The creature's smile widened. The expression too human for something so monstrous. It leaned closer. A low, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate through the glass. Dr. Corbin's console beeped, a warning flashing. Neural spikes detected in subject 13. Another beep. Another warning. Increased neural activity detected in cryptid sectors Sector 4, Sector 7, and Sector 9. Dr. Corbin's hands flew across the console, bringing up live thermal feeds. In each sector, cryptid heat signatures were emerging. Previously dormant creatures now stirring, moving, staring east towards the facility. Oh my God, she whispered, her face draining of color. They're responding. But the hybrid was no longer smiling. Its amber eyes burned with an intense, calculating fury. And as Dr. Corbin stared, paralyzed, the creature leaned closer to the glass, its twisted, intelligent face filling the screen. They're coming. Suddenly, the chamber's lights surged to red, alarms blaring through the facility. Emergency shutters began to slide down over the containment chambers. Panic erupted in the control room. Lock it down, Dr. Corbin screamed, slamming the emergency override. Kill the power to its neural interface, now! The technicians scrambled, frantically typing commands, but it was too late. In the forest beyond, the cryptids moved as one, silent shadows emerging from the mist, converging on a single point. Facility, Black Dome. The hybrid stepped back, its smile returning as the steel shutters slammed down, sealing it in darkness. But darkness meant nothing to him. They are coming.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode, and I hope you'll join us next week for another installment of Hank Dillon, Bigfoot Hunter. And until then, have a great week, everyone.